Welcome back into Double A Baseball. I'm Adam Oppenheim alongside Alex Hynes. The WBC is over. Venezuela has won for the first time in their history, beating the United States in a super low scoring game, Alex, between the USA Dominican game and the USA Venezuela game. The common factor for the United States is the bats were asleep for most of it.
Yeah, they hit in the knockout stages in the three games. They hit 188 as a team, and again, they had the long ball. Harper hit a homer in the final. Gunner and was it Roman Anthony hit the
It
other one?
was, it was, it was.
Yeah, in the semifinal.
Good player.
So they had the he is a good player. He's a pretty good player. They hit the long ball, but it very much fell into they can hit that one ball very far, but they can't do very much else. But I think the overall thing for me more so is it all comes down to the pitching in this tournament, especially in the knockout stages. Bullpens became so necessary because of the pitch limits that were instituted to keep guys fresh. And even with guys being on pitch counts, guys being held back by their GMs and front offices or being limited, we still got some elite pitching from pretty much every team in the knockout stages, especially once you got
Yes.
to the semis and the final.
It was impressive because, I mean, you're facing the best hitters. I mean, every team has at least a couple really solid hitters. I mean, Italy, that was a heroic run, really, considering Kyle Teal also went down and he was their best hitter for Italy. I mean, it's mostly Americans, but have some Italian heritage, which I like because it makes it more fun. You want
Yeah.
to see the MLB players playing. I think just talking about the final last night, because we're recording on the day after Wednesday, March 18th. Eduardo Rodriguez, four and a third. He really hasn't been good in quite a few years, but he was commanding the zone and super impressive. I mean, a couple at bats against Aaron Judge, he was dotting the corners, and then to set it up for Daniel Palencia in the bullpen, who was rock solid.
And before we get a bit more into the weeds with Venezuela and some of the other pitching from the final, just the fact that we got so many pitchers that are good but not great or not elite, at least compared to say the bats that perform so well. You mentioned Eduardo Rodriguez, but I mean Nolan McLean has had only so many starts at the major league level. He played two pretty decent games as a starter. The one that really sticks out to me is Michael Lorenzen. I mean, he shoved in the group stage
Yeah.
against the United States, and then comes out of the bullpen in Italy's final game. Still does pretty well. Again, that was another low-scoring game against Venezuela, and so that was a common thread overall. I think where the pitching, because naturally for especially the big leaguers, you're trying to be cautious. There's a reason why Tarek Skubal didn't pitch in the knockout stages after facing GB, but it was really fun to see that even with the tournament that felt like it could easily be offense dominated because of just the disproportionate star power between,
Yeah.
say, having that USA lineup and the USA pitching staff, which was good and great,
I
actually,
mean,
but
we
not
saw it
the
early on
same.
in the group stage. There were
Yeah.
some teams who would just, lose by 10, but not so much near the end of it at all. I mean, I just want to point out Italy's run. It was so impressive what they were able to do, and they hung in the game against Venezuela. I think it was in the eighth inning. Venezuela broke it open. They took the lead. I think they were behind in that inning. Wilyer Abreu was great for them throughout the WBC, and obviously they have a lot of other MLB level talent. It was kind of cool though to see some of the maybe up and coming players talk about like Japan, and some of the even the more veteran players who haven't had a shot at the MLB level or maybe are not looking to transition to still get to play on that stage where you know, it's pretty awesome to face, some of the best players in the world and they've shown they can hang with them and especially representing their country. I think we talked about it before. it's really cool for a lot of these guys. You can see the emotion. I mean, I watch a lot of Red Sox games. I have never seen Wilyer Abreu be like that excited for home runs, and he was just going crazy. It was wild.
Yeah, I just want to backtrack 1 second. You're talking about those Italy players. I mean, like Sam Antonacci, Dante Nori, two guys who had phenomenal tournaments who both probably will make it to the big league clubs at some point this year. I know Antonacci's a guy that
White
everybody
Sox.
really loves in the
Yeah.
White Sox system, but it was that first chance to test yourself. I mean, yes, you're playing some weaker competition in phases, but you're also going up against Paul Skeens, or I guess it wasn't Paul Skeens in that game, but the same idea. You're going up against Brad Kellers, Mason Millers, guys that are fixtures of big league bullpens and saying, "Hey, look, I can play against these guys." And in Italy's Team Italy's example, it kind of reminds me a little bit of Australia, but to a lesser extent, given that there's more Italian American influence in these teams. But the impact that this can have on the growth of baseball in a country because Venezuela doesn't need to grow baseball any more than they already have. They are
Yeah.
baseball crazed. Same with the Dominican Republic, same with Puerto Rico, same with Mexico, same with Korea, Japan, etc. But in Australia, where there've only been a handful of major leaguers, Travis Bazana has already said, when he was getting drafted #1 overall, that he wants to boost baseball in Australia. And I think the uniform answer from Team Italy was, "Hey, we want to make it to where in the future there are more players from Italy that are, born in Italy, come over to play baseball professionally in the United States or elsewhere." And so I think there's something nice about that too, because it's so easy if you're on Team Italy to say, well, we want to be back here, these guys, these us Italian Americans to continue to showcase, but they are truly representing the country of Italy and that actual heritage even more than just their direct um, heritage in sort of the Italian American sphere.
Yeah, and keep in mind, I mean, the reason the United States was still alive was because of Italy.
Yeah.
Pasquantino. I don't know how many hits he had in the WBC, but I think all of his homers for sure came in one game. But it would have been funny if the U.S. was eliminated in group stage. I know Mark DeRosa was the talk of the town because of some of his comments, not knowing about that the United States had not clinched a spot um, to move on to out of group
I'm glad
stage.
I'm glad you weren't misspeaking, Adam.
Yeah, it's.
Or
It,
or
it-
or you miscalculated. That could also be dangerous.
yeah,
Be
the
careful.
miscalculated word, that's a tough one to use. I mean, hopefully someone else just told him and he knew, but I mean, I know the US was favored in the game against Venezuela. Um, but I mean, the bats just went silent until that eighth inning home run by Harper, which I will say, that was one of the coolest moments I've ever seen. Him doing the salute, him holding up the patch. Like that was awesome. That was an awesome moment. They had all the momentum, and then Luis Ariz draws a walk, and then
Something
it
he
was
does a
over.
lot.
Yes, for sure, for sure, he does that a lot. But I mean, the U.S. Dominican Republic game, that ending on that low strike three called. Oof, you really want ABS in that situation. In particular, just because Mason Miller, I mean, he's so hard to get on base against already.
Do you
And
want to
then
know who the last person to get hit off of Mason Miller was?
I think it was like probably someone like mid-season last year.
It was September of last year, and it was against Warming Bernabel of the Colorado Rockies
Wow.
in like mid-September. And it's been like 0 for 50 since. It's like very similar to that Chapman run he had um, during the back half of last year for the Red Sox, where it's just he's striking out guys at like an 80% clip in the last like going back to the second last month of the year last year. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, usually
He's
when those
good.
yeah, when those guys throw hard, the one thing you're like is, do they have command? When they have command, they are very hard to hit. And
Just
Chapman,
ask the Cubs that
yeah,
104 on the black.
yeah, yeah, that was ridiculous. But I mean, Daniel Palencia was terrific. He looked really sharp. Um, so yeah, I mean, it was just, you know, door was closed right after that. I know a lot of hate's gonna be on Aaron Judge. He didn't play well outside of the group stage. I mean, he is the captain. I know other people contributed, but one bad at bat in particular, he took that 3-1 pitch down the middle, and then the 3-2 he rolls over to third. Just unfortunate. It's not going to help with the narratives. I'll say that uh, for
It
Judge.
Yeah, and I mean I understand that all too. It's just the problem is it's also just small sample size for everything. I mean, again,
It is.
this is not the MLB playoffs. We're used to 5 game series, we're used to 7 game series where things can change. There's ebbs and flows even within a 7 game series. But here it's one and done. And that's what makes this so great. I think because again, we're talking about a sport that is series based going to one and done. And I mean, what's the thing we love most about baseball? Game seven. And we're basically getting a game seven, 3 straight games of the knockout stages.
Right.
And even for some teams, there was a game seven in the pool play in order to survive, and in order to make it out of your pool. So there is that different aspect. And that's where, again, maybe Eduardo Rodriguez gives up 6 runs in, you know, 7 out of 10 games if they were to play 10 games. But he pitched a heck
He
of a
shoved.
game
Yeah.
and at the right time. And that's what makes this so fun because you get guys that, just have that heater. And if you have that heater, good on you. You're going to be in good shape. I mean, you're not going to see too many guys that, are going to be, you're not seeing a prolonged series, which can make things easier to even out. And that's what makes it fun. You get that more adrenaline pumping too, I think. That plays a factor.
And the crowd was awesome. It was
Yeah.
so loud. Uh,
Just the pans to the Venezuelan fans. I just remember there's just one guy. They came back to him in a slow mo at during one of the tosses to break, but he just turns directly in the camera and yelling "Vamos," and it's just like there's the real emotion. Like a much rawer emotion than you see in any major league game, even a game seven of the World Series. You don't see that same emotion from fans, and that's what makes it so beautiful.
and even Miguel Cabrera, when the second strike was in, he was like hopping up. He was ready to go. I think it's cool that on a lot of these teams you also have former MLB players, um, just like helping out and stuff, and
I
even higher
still
positions like Pujols.
I still love the Venezuelan manager saying when he was asked who's going to be available to pitch in this game against the United States, he says even Johan Santana, the pitching coach, is available. Like I mean that's the fun thing. I mean you got
Yeah,
him on one side, you got Posada on Team Italy with Cervelli managing. Which by the way, I love Francisco Cervelli. Fun guy. Seems like he's really
yeah.
doing a lot for Italian baseball, and he's the guy that I think everyone's sort of thinking maybe he could be a major league manager here soon, which would be really fun as this little side quest.
That would be interesting. I haven't even.
I think he could do it.
I mean, that makes sense. I mean, a lot of times it's dependent on like the position. So like first base and catcher, you feel like they're kind of leaders, and can transition well over to manager. Is like other positions, it's harder to see or at least imagine. I
Yeah.
don't know if that's statistically true, but it
I
sure
think
feels like that.
catcher heavily
Catcher,
is, yeah. I mean, you look at Steven Vogt, David Ross
David
was
Ross,
very quickly a manager. There's definitely other obvious ones that I'm already blanking on. Um, you know,
Jared
just in,
Saltalamacchia. I know he was a Cape Cod league manager.
sure, sure.
That's a random fact.
You learn
Uh,
something new every day.
MLB at a Cape Cod, yeah, that's funny. But this WBC, so much fun. It makes it all the more special that it's not every year.
Yeah.
I know there's. I think DeRosa point out, you'd like to do it over All-Star break. I think there isn't a great time to do it for baseball
No,
because for the hitters, it's honestly completely fine. Maybe they're a little bit out of rhythm, but for the pitchers and players who aren't under contract, it's really tough to commit to like throwing innings. For example, Garrett Whitlock did not think he would pitch 3 times in 5 days. I looked this up or tried to like hand do it, and I think last year was like 6 or 7 times that he pitched 3 times in 5 days. Like that's not his thing. And
Right.
his velocity actually ticked down 2 to 2.5 yesterday, last night.
Off of that too, one thing that was reported as well was that Daniel Palencia was only going to be allowed to enter that final game if he threw in a safe situation in the ninth inning. The Cubs basically said,
Yeah,
if it's
same
not a
for
safe
Miller.
situation, we'll allow it. But if unless it's a safe situation and it's like you direly need him, we'll allow it then. But otherwise, keep your hands off. We need this guy's UCL, in September. And that's why I just think you're not going to get a good
No,
medium. I honestly will say I don't mind this though because at this point the pitch limits honestly worked for one. I do think the one thing I would say if there is anything would be expand pitching staff sizes and allow for a few more transitions because I know like the US were understaffed by one because they you could only
Bednar.
have so many additions and subtractions,
Yeah,
so they couldn't replace a couple of the guys that left.
yeah.
But I think it works a bit more to have it earlier with the pitch counts because it still allows you to see a lot of guys. It still keeps them safe as can be. I don't mean there wasn't any indication that there were any major injuries or even minimal injuries that came out of this tournament. And again, I think we saw what the impact the bullpens can have, and as long as you have maybe a few extra bullpen arms available, it shouldn't be an issue for the national team managers. The problem that I think of with All-Star Game is one, you still need to do prelims at some point because you really would only be able to do a quarter semifinal at the most, probably just a semi and a final. Um, in during an a 1 week All-Star break. Even like the Olympics in 28, I think they've got 6 teams and they're playing in a 1 week span in like a prelim semi-final um stage. But a lot of guys want that week off. And I mean, you already see guys bailing out of the All-Star game if they pitch on Sunday.
It,
Are we You're more
it's
likely to have the best pitchers in March, in my opinion. Yes, you'll get a Scooble that understandably doesn't want to pitch because he's got to get his money at the end of the year, and Scott Boras wants to make sure he gets his money at the end of the year. But I mean, I don't. I think you're going to encounter more issues doing it mid-season unless you were to expand the All Star break to 2 weeks and offer more time. But then the 50, 60, however many percent of guys, probably more, that are major leaguers that aren't competing for a national team are just sitting at home on the couch and they're thinking, well, what's the point of this for me?
it's tough with baseball because you don't want to expand it because hitters want to stay in at least sort of a flow. It's baseball is particularly a really tough sport just because a pitcher is not going to risk anything if they're not on schedule to pitch in the middle of a season. You have to do it before, and you have to give them a break after the season. So, what are you going to put it in like November, like right after it ends? But some players have been off. The players from the playoff teams who went far are probably not going to want to pitch. There's no perfect answer. That being said, this is one of the coolest sporting events out of all these sports. Representing your country just means more. I talked about it when the Olympics finished up a couple weeks ago. You see the pride. Like Ronald Acuna hits a homer. Well, he might be a bad example just because he has so many, celebrations, whatever he's doing. But the Abreu example, he is not screaming towards the dugout after a go-ahead home run, like going that crazy, helmet flying off his head after a solo bomb in the fifth inning, something like that. The
And
emotion you see from the players, from the fans, from the countries. Imagine being at like a bar in one of those countries, watching that game and watching Venezuela win. It'd be an unreal experience.
yeah, and I mean, even like look at the semifinal for Venezuela. I mean, Danny Palencia, who does have a lot of emotion. He's a
He
guy
always does, yeah.
he's a ball of energy. I love that he's on my team. I mean, he's just got that fun element to him, that a bit of that sort of psychopathic reliever energy to it as well. But after he won the game against Italy, I mean, he was celebrating, more than you would for, say, even a playoff game. Maybe not necessarily, World Series clinching versus WBC clinching. Maybe there's some correlation there as a closer, but comparing that to anything else you would have seen, there's genuine emotion knowing that you're keeping your country going, and especially for a closer, where it is all on your back more so than you at least get four at bats as a hitter to try and prove yourself and represent. So I just think the pride that you see from these countries, especially the baseball crazed countries, looking at Venezuela, looking at the Dominican
Dominican.
Republic,
Yeah.
especially. I mean, there there's that emotion there because it means more, it genuinely does, to be able to represent a country for whom baseball and culture are intertwined more so than any other combination of sport and country, honestly. I don't think there's necessarily many other countries where a singular sport is so tied into their culture than it is with baseball in those countries.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense. I mean, you can point to Canada and hockey, but it anything else is it's pretty hard to compete with the love those people have with baseball. And they show it, they express it, they're loud. I know Aaron Judge said it was I think it was like even better than playing in a World Series. It was louder, something like that. I don't want to misquote him. But yeah, super
Don't
cool.
misspeak now, Adam.
Yeah, of course not. Do you have any final thoughts on the WBC before we move on to your position list? We're gonna go over outfield today.
I just overall think it was a phenomenal competition. I think it kind of reminds us that there's a bit more to baseball, in terms of what you can feel and you can enjoy. Because I think sometimes in the slog of 162 games, you kind of lose a bit of that emotion, unless you're, going to games that, consistently as a fan, or, tuned in every single day. Even then, it can get a bit monotonous in a way that's not meant as a negative, but like this kind of it reminds you of why you love baseball when you see guys that are playing like they are kids, truly. I mean, John Smoltz was describing the celebrations as it's on broadcast as it's like they're 10 years old again, and it sort of reminds you of playing Little League. You got a base hit and it's like it's the biggest moment of your life.
Go. Yep. Yeah. Let's go.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. And that's why we love baseball, and that's what this competition gives you more than anything else.
Love that. Love that. Yeah, WBC was a whole lot of fun. Well, we will now go over Alex Hynes' top 10 list at every position. In the last episode, we went through the infield, catcher, first, second, shortstop, third. And in this episode, we're going to go over left field, center field, right field, starting pitchers, and relief pitchers. Maybe we'll have DH if we have time to quickly touch on that. But let's first, Alex, I guess let's start in left field. Do you want to explain your criteria again for your list, in case
Yeah.
anyone missed in the last episode?
Basically, it's meant to be sort of a hybrid of last year's results, with future predictions. This is not necessarily saying who the best players are going to be at these positions by the end of the year. It is going into the season, who do I think are the best at their given position. So there is some element of, say, the aging curve, and stuff like that that may tail somebody down the list. And so, I'm also not necessarily putting, you know, a one good season rookie all the way up just because they had one good season, basically. There's some projection in there as well. And then the other two main things are, when it comes to injuries, I really only fault someone based on injuries if it's a common or habitual occurrence that they are hurt. If somebody just got hurt last year on a whim, no big deal. I'm not necessarily hurting them because of that. And lastly, positionally, you'll see a few positions last would have changed from my list last year, and differ from MLB Network's. Um, and that's just because I personally am using Fangraphs roster resource as a benchmark, so that way there is continuity through each position to where nobody's being listed in obscure places. And it's just based on projection. So again, I'm trying to think of what the main example I used last time is. But Bo Bichette. Bo Bichette's at third base, was on our third base list,
Yep.
even though he was a shortstop his entire career because he will be at third. Basically, that's that's how the positional element works. In left field, I want to bring that up specifically because Jordan Alvarez I have as a DH, even though he did a little bit of left field last year. That's why he's not the number one left fielder. Instead, he's at the DH position.
Same thing with Jaron Duran as well. And those
Right.
were your top two guys going into last season. So once again, we'll put up a graphic with the list. So put up the left fielders. Uh, First thing to point out, Cody Bellinger. Man, did he have just a monster year last year with the Yankees? Really close to 30 home runs. Obviously, that season with the Dodgers he had, it's going to be really hard to top that season. Just a monster season, 47 home runs, 115 runs batted in. Wyatt Langford, he's not a flashy player particularly, but he had a really
No.
solid season, upped his power a little bit. I mean, it's not as good as, a couple other players I would say on this list, but everything he does all around, um, considering his defense too in left field.
Right. That's
Um,
what jumped him for me too, was the defense to combine with being a 2020 kind of guy.
I mean, that makes sense. I mean, Tyler Soderstrom, the A's are building something. Um, And he's a big part of it. I think Tyler Soderstrom has been a little bit underrated, considering a lot of the hype went on Nick Kurtz, because of course, Jacob Wilson, who had a terrific rookie season as well. But Tyler Soderstrom has a lot of upside, I think, still to be tapped into after a really solid season last
And he,
year. I'll say this: Ian Happ, always just so steady. It makes sense that he stays at five.
yeah.
He's been doing his thing for a while now.
Yeah, I mean, Ian Happ is one of those guys where he can be frustrating to watch at times because he is just so predictable in a way that's not meant to be a negative. It is, you know what you're getting from Ian Happ, and you need to have those guys to build your team around. One other thing on Soderstrom is I think he's finally going to start to come into his own a bit more now that he's not trying to float around the diamond like he was before. He started out as a catcher, but Shea Langoliers became the everyday catcher ahead of him. They were both kind of in that same not maybe not the same rookie class, but they were coming up together in the system. Moved to first base, but now you've got Kurtz. So where does Soderstrom go? Not a great defensive left fielder, but you get the bat in the lineup. And so I do think some stability for him defensively will help just sort of uh, a more linear progression in his development as he gets older.
Yeah, I mean, I like that. That's a great example to use for him moving all around. I honestly totally forgot about that, but that makes sense. For the A's, Stephen Kwan, another name to point out. I think if you did this after his rookie year, going into 2023, he would be maybe even higher up on this list. I know a couple of the guys like Alvarez might be in this left fielders list. When you look at Stephen Kwan, there isn't as much upside as other guys. He's a Gold Glove caliber defender. I mean, you write it here in your notes. Everyone knows how good of a defender Stephen Kwan is, and he has great bat to ball skills, but doesn't hit for a lot of power. Um, and that's particularly why you have a lot of these guys over him, and it makes sense. Um, and then you really have a bunch of guys that were not ranked or not at the position. Churio, Taylor Ward, Kyle Stowers. Man, he just burst onto the scene
Yeah.
last year. I mean, that is crazy to think about. Um,
I will say one thing. Jackson Churio is an odd one. He wasn't on the list last year, and that was just because he was the prime example of a guy who
okay, that's fair.
positionally was wacky. Because I remember, I'm pretty sure last year I had him as a right fielder. MLB Network had him as a center fielder, and he played mainly left field. So I meant that he was all over the outfield based on where he was projected versus where he was. So that's why he's now comfortably in left field. Now that especially Yelich is no longer a left fielder, he's basically a DH only. That's his spot. So Churio fits into that defensive thing I was talking about at the beginning.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And he was fun to watch in the WBC as well, although he didn't get a ton of at bats. Riley Green's an interesting one. Man, he's a frustrating player at points.
Yeah.
I mean, talk
Yeah.
about him in the postseason last year. I know he didn't hit extremely well, but you mentioned it. The swing and miss is just absolutely ridiculous. I don't know what percentile he's in for that sort of stuff. I can look it up now. But sometimes it's really tough watching his at bats for a Detroit team that was really good. A big part of last season. Squared up, he was in the first percentile. That means doesn't score up anything. Strikeouts, fourth percentile. Whiff, 12th percentile. That is really tough as a hitter.
And that's the
And
problem with him is the results still have worked, even though he was a 200K guy last year. That's where it's still hard to evaluate him. And in the end, I just left him where he was just because I couldn't necessarily feel comfortable in putting, say, Soderstrom, Hap, even Churio above him. But I also, I don't know, this is a very frustrating position. Left field is such a hard one to kind of evaluate with the players that are there right now.
on it's hard to put Green below Hap, but I think there's an argument to for Soderstrom to be over him. Um,
I can understand that. Yeah.
I mean, it's tough because I like Riley Green too as a defender. I think he's a pretty decent defender as well, but the swing and miss at the plate brings it down for me. Once again, didn't have a great postseason last year. But I mean, it's not a really deep position, but like Kyle Stowers, I mean, if you asked me about him last season, I probably have never even heard of him. Or maybe I've heard of him, but I was like, could not point him out of a sum of people. And that's how amazing he was last year. And part of the Marlins' success, their winning streak last year, um, their sweep of the Yankees, which was like a historic moment, I think. I forgot what the statistic was, but that was amazing for them. And he was a big part of it. I'm really excited with the bat. Randy Rosarena, obviously the great postseason. What was that? It was like, what, 4 years ago
That
at
was
this point?
2020.
Oh my. Wow. Yeah, that was a long time
Yeah.
ago at this point. But he's
Wow.
still doing it in Seattle now. But hey, he's a really fun player. Hope he has a few more postseason moments because he is a very electric player. That's probably all we got time for in left field. So let's move on to center.
Last thing on left field though, just because I think it is important to note, not on the list, Roman Anthony, and that is simply because he only has 300 career plate appearances. The
Okay.
performances he put out last year would be worthy of inclusion, but he had 150 fewer ABs than Kyle Stowers, and that was kind of the toss up for that final spot. Roman Anthony will be on this list next year. There's almost no doubt the injury last at the end of last year just cut off a sample to where it feels hard saying somebody's a top 10 player in a position when they've played
Yeah.
less than half a season.
Yeah,
So,
he would be way up there. How about
not a slight on him.
James Wood? Is he on?
James Wood is listed in right field for me.
Is
Um,
he?
I'm pretty sure once I
Yeah.
figure out.
Yeah.
Yes, because that's because the roster resource has Dalen Lyle out in left field this year.
Oh, there you go.
So,
All right. Sounds good. Center field. Once again, this is my first time looking at it, so this is no sneak peeks of what I think about it. Julio Rodriguez at one. Yeah, he really did have a rough start. You mentioned it here. Everyone was like, "What's going on with Julio?"
yeah,
And then he was able to kind of turn up near
he
the end
does
of the
this every
season.
year now.
It feels
It's
like it.
just every year,
When it,
slow start, boom.
when he chases out of the zone, it's a little bit easier, a lot easier to face as a pitcher. When you get him behind, he's just swinging at that slider in the dirt or whatever. Byron Buxton. Buxton's always a tough one just because of injuries. Jackson Merrill, man, his season a couple years ago when he was a rookie was really, really good. Impressive for the Padres, but you mentioned it. Step back. I mean, the Padres weren't great last year, but he was part of it. I mean, was he not hitting cleanup the entire year for them? It felt like it behind Tatis Machado, obviously. But some newcomers on this list.
A lot of them,
Andy
a lot of
Paz.
them.
Well, P. Crow Armstrong, too. Um, PCA had a great year. The chasing is really annoying to watch. He might have
Yeah,
the highest chase rate in the majors. It sure feels like it, at least if you want to watch a lot of Cubs games. Andy Paz, he had a point where he struggled last year, but he was like red hot to start the season, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, he was. I had a phenomenal like April into May.
Yeah, Trent Grisham, he benefited a lot from playing at Yankee Stadium, but he also pulled the ball extremely well. Had a big home run season. Not the best defender. I would say there was a few points last year where I was like, what route is he taking to the ball? But
He used to be a really good defense first guy, and now they've got the back going. He's kind of lost some of
yeah.
the ground and center. But
But
yeah,
I mean,
same.
he was leading off for them against right-hand pitching, so that's about all you can ask for the Yankees because it's not like they were looking at him as a piece of the future last year, but now maybe they are. Cedar Rafaela, that's bat isn't great. Defense is awesome. Brandon Marsh, that's an interesting one. I'm trying to think of who else would be on this list. I mean,
I I was shocked by Brandon Marsh when I actually dug in. He was an above average hitter the last 3 years, which again, we've talked about the Phillies a lot the last couple of years. And I remember I guess this would have probably dated right back to about 2022 when we did our little watch party of the World Series. And
yeah.
Brandon Marsh was one of those guys that was a weak link.
And he could not hit
Um,
left on left. I don't think he does he
I'm
start
not
against
sure.
lefties still? I don't think he starts against lefties.
I can't remember what their shuffling was last year, but
Oh,
again,
yeah.
he was the guy that just had some. He was hitting a lot better than I thought he was, and given that this again depth wise, very weak position, as you can kind of see with the bottom three, Marsh being seven or being eight. No, yeah, eight, nine, and 10 are both pretty
Yeah. Bader,
yikes.
Cruz, Harrison Bader. Hmm.
Harrison Bader is a guy that I'm I kind of wrote about it in my notes. The peripherals were bad. They were bad. I'm this is more of just respecting the fact that he had a bat resurgence in 2025 and just thinking, well, I mean, am I going to put O'Neal Cruz, who had, still hasn't figured out how to cut down the strikeout rate and has looked uh, a bit awkward in center field, above him? Is there anybody else in center field that can go above him? I'm not sure, especially when, you look at the list from last year. Mike Trout's now to a DH. Michael Harris, I want to believe he's going to come back eventually, but hasn't hasn't done it. Brenton Doyle has lost his elite defense and outfield, and then Bellinger shifts position. Jung Hoo Lee shifts position. JJ Bleday, that was a fun run in 2024. Um,
How about
but yeah,
Varsho? That's what MLB Network has. He's in there. Now
Varsho,
he can hit the ball hard and is a pretty good defender. I don't know.
yeah, I would say Varsho probably would be a good miss there. Now that I think about it, I probably Varsho was was a tough one because he also just, you know, the games played for him were tough because he only had 271 plate appearances last year.
Yeah, that's right.
So that's what kind of cut him out is just, I mean, again, I do say I don't like to penalize for injury.
I
I
think he could fit into this one
The
particularly.
track record was still concerning because he had a good last year before he got
Very
hurt.
good.
He
Yeah.
had moments in 2024, but the OPS was 700 or lower in the 2 years prior, two full seasons prior. So I need to see a little bit more with the bat to confirm that the glove, which is certainly still there.
Yeah, that's
I could see him at 9 or 10 above Bader or Cruz. I could certainly I'd probably see him above Bader, but I just want to see a bit more.
yeah, Harrison Bader, I was not expecting to make any list, if I'm being honest.
I
But
wasn't either, but
like, not a lot of people change their opinions on veteran players. So,
I wanted to give a little bit of respect there. Again, I don't think he's going to be able to retain it. That's where again, this is not projecting who's going to be the best by the end of the year. I don't think he's going to be a top 10 center fielder by maybe July, but heading into the year, I mean, he you could make an argument.
yeah, and it's fun for him. Was he in San Fran?
Yeah,
Trying to cover that outfield grass. That's a lot of fun. Because
still has
he's
some of that good step.
yeah, he is still very fast in the outfield. Let's move over to right field. Aaron Judge, clearly gonna be
Really?
number
Yeah,
one.
yeah.
Um, Still the greatest hitter, and I don't think it's that close.
Nope.
Um, Juan Soto too, man. This position is just absolutely
This is
stacked.
where it gets fun. This is the
Oh,
fun position. The last two have been rough. This one,
yeah.
it's like I'm struggling to cut some guys in the 9-10 range.
Yeah, Nando. Yeah, Tatis is fun. Corbin Carroll, of course. Kyle Tucker moves down a couple spots. That makes sense. The injury, um, postseason stuff wasn't great. Whole lot of rollovers for Kyle Tucker. Um, you would think the injury has to do with that. Ronald Acuna Jr. has a chance to, you know,
Ru-
get as high as maybe even two on this list. That's
I
how
would
good he
agree.
is.
This is just he has had his injury issues now.
Yeah.
Last year, when he came back from injury, he had a 161 WRC plus. He is absurd. And so this is more so I probably could have flipped him with Tucker and just put him into the
Yeah, I'd be
five
okay with
spot.
that.
But I just Carroll and Tatis had such good years last year that I'm and the track record is just so good there in the last years of being healthy. Acuna, if you put together his last 3 seasons worth of games, is right there. The problem is that spans about 4 or 5 years because of the big knee injuries. So he'll probably be number three by the end of the year. I would say that for sure.
It's funny looking at the number six on left and right field, Jackson Chourio, who had a good postseason, and in Trent Grisham, compared to what right field is like.
Yeah,
Say Suzuki, James Wood, mentioned earlier. Suzuki's a fun player to watch when he has the bat going. Had a cold streak. Really, the entire Cubs lineup for a good portion of down the stretch last season.
that's what makes Seiya Suzuki such an underrated player, I think, is because there have been so many spans where it's just been like a slog for him. And part of that was just the acclimation period in his rookie season from Japan to the US. The second year he had some shakiness in part of the year. And then last year he went cold when the bats went cold for the entire team. Yet he's been a 120 WRC plus guy for all 3 seasons. So he is a guy that at the end of the year, the stats are consistent and he continues to be a very good above average hitter. And now he's playing right field defensively. Uh, Not sure, but
Yeah, I
he
think
hits the ball.
he does hit the ball. So I mean, so does James Wood. He absolutely
He
crushes the
also
ball.
he misses the ball at times
What?
too.
Yeah, when he makes contact. Yeah, that's a big caveat. And then Nimmo. I think Abreu could jump Brandon Nimmo. Um,
I can too.
just because I just think Abreu has more potential to hit home runs. Of course, the Red Sox are in feel like they're in dire need of home runs for being a good projected a good team. They don't have a lot of home run power. Abreu might be the guy they could get it from. If he has like a 30 home run season, he could jump up a couple of spots. And that wouldn't be surprising with how good he is with this glove.
Yeah, Abreu's a guy that again, like when he's your 10th best player at position, that's not bad. That's not
Right.
bad.
That's really good.
And I did like what he was able to do. I mean, the whole Red Sox defensive outfield. Or maybe not the whole defensive outfield,
Anthony was pretty good in left,
but
I would
between
say.
him and Rafael were both fantastic, and then Roman
Yeah.
Anthony out there was good, was solid when he was healthy. Um, in the left field spot, so that's pretty good defensive outfield for what can be a wonky outfield in Fenway. Certainly you care about the defense probably a bit more in right and center compared to the shorter monster in left.
Yeah, it always depends. I mean, it's much better not to have Jarren Duran there. So with that being said,
You're-
let's quickly touch on DH. We have about 16 minutes left. Otani at one.
Yeah, believe it or
Yes.
not, Shohei
Yes.
Ohtani can hit the ball pretty darn far.
Um,
Um,
I mean, other guys, Yandy Diaz still hanging in there.
this is also a tough position because it's arbitrary a bit, but like, I mean, where am I going to put Otani otherwise? He's not a top 10 starting pitcher right now, but he's also the number two hitter on the planet.
Yes.
Jordan Alvarez, Springer,
Mike
Schwarber have
Trout.
all kind of solidified themselves as DHs. And then outside of, say, the bottom few spots, there are a couple of guys, Duran, Trout, Ivan Herrera, as well as a fun one that just
That is
have
fun.
become kind of positionless more than anything. Where it's, I am assuming that they are not going to be playing in the field more than half the time.
Yeah, that makes sense for yeah, that makes sense for all these players, you would think. Aranda plays first for the Rays.
Right. And
So
that's why we talked about this with when we went over first base. It was one of those two was going to have to be first base. One was a
yeah.
DH. Yandy seemed more likely to be moving to the DH spot, which is, yeah, he was in the first base list for MLB Network, I recall.
Yeah. I mean it's pretty good DH, so it's a lot of power. Mike Trout. Cooley's still on there. I wish he
I
was
mean,
center, man.
it would have been he would have made the center field list pretty comfortably this year, even with, declining defense, declining offense,
Yes, he
declining
would.
body. Um, but I'm glad he's kind of in DH because I'm not sure he's a top 10 right fielder.
Yeah,
Hate to
that
say
I
it.
think I don't think he would be. I don't even
That's
think it's that
that's one of the
close.
nice things about this list. This is just sort of like a man, you guys mash list because where else is Schwarber making a top 10? Where else is Otani making a top 10? Where else is Trout right now making a top 10? There's some respect to guys that are just, either historically good, presently great without the
Power
position
hitter.
to show for it.
Yeah, love it. Starting pitchers.
This
There's
was tough,
Scooble
man.
still at
This was
one.
tough.
I think the top three that makes sense. I mean, people might want Skeens one. I'm fine with Scooble still one. Um,
Back-to-back Cy Youngs. Can you really argue with that? I mean, you can with Skeens, but like,
you can. And then
I
I'd
mean,
say Crochet's a comfortable third. Christopher Sanchez, I love that at four. I don't think there's any guy below him that you can even make an argument.
I think honestly the top five. I think Logan Webb is pretty firmly in the fifth spot for me. Maybe not firmly, but he is.
I
Logan
know
Logan
people
Webb in my heart is a top five pitcher in baseball.
people would want Yamamoto over him, but if that's factoring in the postseason a
Innings,
lot. I think for Logan Webb, how many times he goes like 7 innings in a game
yeah,
and doesn't get a lot of run support. It's like he was really good
and
last
and
year.
he increased his strikeout rate, which does mean there's a chance that throws more pitches, doesn't go as deep into games, but he is developed into a pitcher that's more than just a soft contact guy. And he's going to be in innings. He's going to be top three in innings in the National League probably every year until he turns like 34, if he's
Yeah.
still pitching. Like
I,
genuinely, don't see anybody else who can throw that many innings in the National League, in baseball in general, at a consistent level.
yeah, 5 straight years he was just a monster.
Yeah,
Pitching a lot, being available, still throwing pretty hard. He's a really fun pitcher to watch. Zach Wheeler, it's tough to see him um down that far, but I mean, it
can't.
unfortunately makes sense.
And he's a guy that Zach Wheeler. I could have put Zach Wheeler anywhere. Genuinely, not anywhere, but almost anywhere. I mean, he could have easily been a top three pitcher if he didn't get hurt at the end of last year. I think I think you could make an argument that he has been a top three, if not the best pitcher of the last 5, 6 years. And he's not won a Cy Young, which is almost criminal.
And
But
it's
he
gonna be
is,
hard to get one now
yeah, and
with
he's
Skeens there.
genuinely one of my favorite pitchers in all of baseball. I love Zach Wheeler. I almost put him further down the list, but given that he's going to be able to come back for a decent portion of this year, I felt like it's not unreasonable to at least, it's not like he's getting Tommy John. He's done for the year. Still, obviously, the thoracic outlet is a tough, unpredictable thing to come back from. But I wanted to put him right sort of in that middle part of the list where you respect what he's done, what he can do, and the fact that he's not done yet.
And continuing on the list, Hunter Brown, he was so good last year. He was unbelievable. When Framber Valdez took the step a little bit down, he brought him back up. And he was certainly the Astros' best starting pitcher last season.
Yeah.
So just awesome. His command was really good. Um, Top three fish and Cy Young. So no arguments there. Chris Sale is a tough one. The Sale thing is always difficult because he strikes out a lot of players. He's dealt with injuries. Last year's one, maybe one of the most unfortunate ones. I think it was it trying to go for a complete game and he like tripped over the mound? What was it exactly?
I forget, but yeah. it's. I honestly didn't think he was going to be on the list, and then I real looked at the stats again and saw, wow, that the reason he's not showing up is because he only threw 120 innings, but they were some of the best 120 innings you are going to see this year. And so you got to respect that. I know the injury history. I know maybe I'm running back on my word when I talk about injuries, but I mean, back-to-back years after the Cy Young win
He might have been
being
second, maybe.
phenomenal.
Would he have beat Sanchez if he finished off the year?
I mean, I think it would be too tough to decide because you're talking about a good 50 odd inning difference.
All right, but
Um,
he would have finished top three last
he
year.
would have been he would have been much more comfortably towards the top. Let's put it that way, especially if he was putting up the same for 170 innings.
Yeah, and then Evaldi, like that near the end of the list. Love Nate
I
Evaldi.
was I mean, I've got an honorable mention list that's longer than my arm, and Nathan Evaldi was just you know what? There's something different than these other guys. I love Max Fried. I love what he did. You could make an argument. I would not
You love
complain.
Brian Wu though.
I love Brian Wu. Brian Wu is another one of my favorite pitchers in baseball. Again, I would be fine putting him in there. DeGrom, the resurgence, would love to put him in the top 10. Even Hunter Green. I know he's going to be out until about July now with arthroscopic surgery. But again, he's a pretty darn good pitcher when he's healthy and when he's at his best. Nathan Evaldi just edges all of those guys out because I wanted to respect what he was able to do despite an injury shortened season. Him and Sale, they both kind of get the little respect nod into the top 10 because if it was a top 15, all those guys I mentioned are on the list. It's just picking 10 pitchers is so much harder than picking 10 center fielders.
It is tough. Well, we got about 8 minutes to go, so let's quickly hit on
Another
the
pen.
relievers. Roldis Chapman, man, monster season. I went back on one of those episodes and I said he was going to get Cy Young votes, and you were like, "Do you really think he's going to get that?" And I said, "Yes," and he did indeed, because that's how monster of a season you have to have as a reliever. Clase did it. Was it 2 years ago?
Yeah, is that
He just had. Did he?
the 0.61 ERA, 60 saves, whatever.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, no, that's not going to happen this season, unfortunately. But
I would bet on that.
yeah, would you? Uh,
Possibly.
yeah, Mason Miller. Um,
I wanted to put Mason Miller one, I'll be honest, but
yeah,
Aroldis Chapman, I mean, I can't
and
argue with
Mason
that.
Miller all down by way of the K. Don Orsillo's calling that so fun. Man, it's fun to see him on
Gosh.
a winning team. I know maybe the A's will be winning more this season, but Mason Miller, I mean, you gave up a lot for him. Awesome, awesome pitcher. Throws a
Yeah.
lot of strikes, throws hard. Probably still going to be in the relief role, closer role this season. Edwin Diaz, man, Edwin Diaz is fun as well.
He's back. He's back. I
Mhm.
know he had some rough patches where you're like, oh well,
Is he going to be out of the
what is he
league?
now?
Yeah, yeah,
Um, Speaking of WBC, that didn't help him
yeah,
when he got hurt in 23.
yeah. That's true. Cade Smith, yeah, newcomer onto this list. I mean, that makes sense. He was throwing heat
He's
last
not a
season.
newcomer on the list. Come on now. He was number 4 on my list last year. Now he's a
Oh,
closer
there you
though.
go. I'm sorry. Totally
Yeah,
misread that.
no,
But
that's where
he was
Cleveland had two of
great
the
as
top 4 relievers, and
I
now they
honestly
have
thought he was
one.
better than he was last season in 2025. So he took a step back from 2024. Interesting.
He did, but the some of the enough of the underlying numbers said he's still pretty darn good, to where I wasn't going to penalize him as much.
Yeah, I
But
mean
the
his whip is practically the same amount of strikeouts and nearly the
yeah
same amount of innings. So yeah, no, Kate Smith's a ton of fun to watch. Um, who else on this list is interesting? Randy Rodriguez, we talked about him off the air. He just
yeah.
had a great season. Didn't pitch a whole lot of innings compared to some of these other guys. Griffin Jacks. People are getting a taste of what he can do with Team USA. Part of Twins, whatever they were doing at the
Well,
deadline. So,
yeah.
and
No,
then
now he's in Tampa in another situation that's probably not all that amazing.
yeah, It's
Could
unfortunate.
be worse, but yeah.
Yeah, definitely could be worse situation, but
But
yeah.
Griffin Jacks, I will say, reminds me a bit of Cade Smith. Obviously, he's older. It's a bit of a different situation, but he's one of those. He's one of looking at this list four middle relievers that break the list that were
Yeah.
able to perform high leverage and were just so dominant in the role they were in.
Hmm.
And part of that was Griffin Jacks could have easily been a closer, but he was behind Yohan Duran until the trade deadline, and injuries obviously allowed him to into the closer role earlier, the same way that, say, Randy Rodriguez was behind up, a mix of relievers for San
Yeah.
Francisco, Cade Smith behind Class A until this year.
And Duran, fun with him and Philly, too. It's just better to see these high power relievers on good teams
Yeah,
because that means, they're pitching in high leverage moments, playoff moments. It's just a lot cooler. Relief appearances are fun in the regular season, but when you get to the playoffs and you see like heat versus power, that's where you get the best matchups.
yeah.
So, yeah.
And that's where, again, with like Griffin Jackson, my 10 spot, Devin Williams in the honorable mention spot. Those are two guys that didn't have great ERAs last year, but the fact is, one, ERA is not great for relievers anyway. But with relievers, they're so volatile. There's sometimes you just have to, you know, weather a bad year. I mean, again, look at Edwin Diaz. He had a couple not great years. He is
Josh
still
Hader was
phenomenal.
dominant for,
And and Josh Hader's had some wonky years where it
yes.
was bad or it just didn't feel good,
Yeah.
and he's still a phenomenal closer. So Griffin Jacks, Devin Williams, you look at the ERAs, you think, oh, really? This is a bit of a predictive pick going forward because relievers, you can't just go off of what last year was because there's a good chance that last year's top relievers are not going to be this year's top relievers.
Love it. Love it. So we talked about the World Baseball Classic and then we went over the outfield positions and starting relief pitchers, DH as well. In the last episode, we went over the infield. So if you were interested in that, you can check it out in our last episode. That is going to wrap it up here on Double A Baseball. Alex, you got anything to say?
Next week, start of the season, which
Yep,
also means our predictions that will most certainly not come true. So be
that's
on
right.
lookout early next week.
Maybe some
And
hot takes.
hey, always like some simmering takes.
Yep, yep. Love that. Love that. So once again, for my partner, Alex Hynes, I'm Adam Oppenheim. We'll see you next time on Double A Baseball.